one of the last influential philosophers in modern European culture, and one of the most important philosophers who wrote in classical epistemology. Immanuel Kant proposed a new perspective in philosophy that affected and continues to influence European philosophy until now, meaning that their influence lasted from the 18th century to the 21st century. He published important and fundamental works on epistemology and other works on religion and others on law and history. Immanuel Kant was born in the year 1724 in the city of Königsberg, the capital of the Kingdom of Prussia at that time in the 18th century. It became known today as Königsberg and belonged to the state of Russia. He was the fourth of 11 children who died while they were children, except 4 of them. His father works in the manufacture of horse saddles. Immanuel was a strong student in his studies, but weak in his physique. He was raised in the house of his parents, and they were deeply religious. He grew up in a religious upbringing that encourages devotion and sincerity in the service of religion and humility with people. He received a strict and harsh education, so the study of Latin and religion affected the study of mathematics and science. When Immanuel matured, one of the priests, impressed by his superiority and abilities, helped him study in the Frederick School, the strongest and best school in the Kingdom of Prussia. Immanuel spent 8 years of serious study there, so he studied all the languages of that time from Latin and Greek to Hebrew and French, and he studied mathematics and theology. After graduating with the second rank in his class, he joined Königsberg College, where his interests changed. He became interested in philosophy and science. Immanuel spent 7 years at the university, but did not graduate due to financial hardships that afflicted him, as his mother died, and several years later his father died. So Immanuel had to manage his own financial affairs in 1755. The university gave him a job as an assistant professor, and this job at that time was a low-ranking job and had no paid salary except for fees taken from students, in addition to giving him a very large group of subjects to teach. After his busy school day ended, he enjoyed reading newspapers, sitting in cafes, and in the evenings, he played cards and billiards, and on most days, he would reach his small apartment after midnight drunk, where he rented a small apartment, with only one mattress, a table, and a chair. So he had to work as an assistant in a public library to add some money to his meager income. So he had the opportunity to write throughout the 60s and 70s of the century 18. Immanuel was very active in the field of writing, and he published many books and articles on various topics. He wrote about science, philosophy, ethics, beauty, and books about astronomy, logic, and metaphysics. Immanuel was a popular teacher and was popular with his students, as they saw that his lectures were interesting, as he used to make many funny jokes during the lessons. In the year 1770, he was appointed to the chair of logic and metaphysics, and the university gave him a better salary with which he could live a decent life, developing his fame across the country. He received offers to teach from other universities, some of which promised him 4 times his salary. It was always his nature that he did not like change. He did not accept any change, no matter how simple, even in his house. He did not move the furniture from its place, and any slight change in the arrangement of the furniture would make it unstable. He was also refusing to travel, so he lived his whole life without seeing a mountain or sea, even though the Baltic Sea was only an hour away from his city, and some believe that these habits and descriptions are related to autism. Among the rare incidents that were narrated about this is a unique story that occurred when he was in his 60s, when he used to write in a specific place in his house, at a window overlooking the dome of a huge church. When he writes, his eyes are on paper, and when he raises his eyes, it is on that dome. His neighbor's garden trees obscured the vision from his window to that dome. Immanuel began to fidget and worry. Then he found himself unable to work. However, the problem was solved when his neighbor, who was impressed with his personality, agreed freely to trim those trees so that the philosopher could return to his routine and habit. He also used to take daily walks in the street, which was named in appreciation of him, the Philosopher's Walk, as Immanuel did not miss a single walk until his advanced age prevented him from doing so, except on one occasion when he was obsessed with reading a novel by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and he did not leave the house for a few days. Immanuel lived in the Age of Enlightenment, and was influenced by all the data of that era. Naturally, he was an advocate for human rights, and emphasized the equality of people while at the same time defending his country's government. He studied the works of Isaac Newton's writings, which he made the basis of his lectures on physics and natural philosophy. In the year 1755, he published the famous rotation theory, in which he explains the origin of the world and explains the rotation of the planets. Among his most famous books are The Only Possible Argument to Support Proving the Existence of God, Critique of Pure Reason, What is Enlightenment, The Basis of the Metaphysics of Morals, Critique of the Queen of Governance, Religion Within the Limits of Mere Reason, A Project for Permanent Peace, Anthropology from a Pragmatic Point of View. As a result of his religious writings, he was prevented from writing on religious topics for a long time, and during his life, Immanuel received a lot of criticism towards his ideas, and critics considered that his most famous work was written when he was in his old age, close to 60. Immanuel built all his educational philosophy on the basis that man should not be taken as a means, but always as an end. In other words, the human dignity of the other person should not be despised in any way, even if this other person is a simple maid in the house. The impact that Immanuel urged on Western thought was profound, as the principles he called for became principles for the German people and the European people. He was also able to become very influential in Germany, and German philosophers such as Johann Gottlieb Fichte, Friedrich Schelling, Hegel, and Arthur Schopenhauer were influenced by him, and they established the foundations of German idealism. All of these philosophers saw themselves as correctors, expansionists, and developers of the Kantian system and philosophy. He was one of the believers in God, but he entrusts faith to the conscience and does not depend therein on rational proofs that derive from the phenomena of nature. In Immanuel's doctrine, only natural phenomena are known, and only the realities of things in themselves are implemented. In his book, Immanuel's Critique of the Practical Reason, Immanuel mentioned the need to believe in the existence of God, and that the existence of God is an idea sent by the abstract mind. He believed that whenever we are motivated by some instinct or long-term interests, the act is not moral at all, but only utilitarian. And from him, Immanuel believes that when a religious person does charitable work and waits for another life in return in which he fulfills his desires and instincts, then he is opportunistic, nothing more, and that we must do the moral work for itself only. Immanuel Kant died in the year 1804, and his last words were that it is good. On the other hand, it is inscribed in his tomb with German words meaning the starry heavens above me and the moral law inside me. The position of Immanuel in modern philosophy did not come from a vacuum at all. His theory of ethics laid the sober philosophical foundation for what is called human thought and respect for the human as an end regardless of his characteristics and ideas. This is what makes us respect Immanuel as a philosopher and as a human being.